You bought something this week. Maybe clothes, maybe a product online, maybe just something small you didn't think twice about. It felt normal, routine. You clicked, you paid, it arrived. End of story. But somewhere in that process, someone paid the real price, not in money, in freedom. Modern slavery didn't disappear. It adapted, it scaled, it optimized itself into the global economy. And today, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry hiding in plain sight. Not in chains, not in cages, but in contracts, in supply chains, in systems that look completely normal from the outside. In the next few minutes, you're going to see how modern slavery actually works, who profits from it, and why it continues to exist in a world that claims to have abolished it. Because once you see it, you can't unsee it. Let's start with something simple. The supply chain. Every product you buy goes through layers: raw materials, factories, transport, warehouses, retail. Each step adds value, each step adds cost, and at every single step there's pressure. Pressure to move faster, pressure to produce more, pressure to reduce costs. Because consumers want lower prices, companies want higher margins, investors want growth. And those three forces don't balance, they squeeze. And when something gets squeezed hard enough, something breaks. That something is almost always labor, because labor is flexible. Labor can be pushed. Labor can be replaced. Let me introduce you to Maya. Maya is 17. She works in a factory that produces clothing. Not luxury brands, not exclusive items, just everyday products people buy without thinking. She didn't choose this job because it fulfilled her. She chose it because there were no other options. Her family depends on it. She works 12 to 14 hours a day. The air is thick. The conditions are unsafe. The pay is barely enough to survive. She doesn't negotiate. She doesn't complain because she can't. To the system, she's not a person. She's a variable, a cost input. And the lower that cost, the higher the profit. Now multiply Maya by millions, across different countries, different industries, different conditions. That's modern slavery. Not always chains, but control, debt bondage, forced labor, coercion, lack of alternatives, a situation where leaving isn't realistically possible. And it exists for one reason: it works, economically. That's the part most people avoid. This isn't just a moral failure. It's an economic system producing results. Modern slavery generates billions every year because cheap labor creates cheap products. Cheap products increase demand. High demand increases volume, and volume multiplies profit. That profit doesn't stay at the bottom. It moves upward, through suppliers, through corporations, through shareholders, layer by layer, until it becomes invisible. Now here's where it gets uncomfortable, because the system doesn't function without demand, and demand doesn't exist without consumers. You. Not directly, not intentionally, but structurally. Because every time price becomes the main deciding factor, the system responds. It optimizes, and the fastest way to optimize cost is labor. Let's break it down. A product costs $5 to produce. It sells for $40. That gap feels normal, expected. But inside that gap, there are decisions. Decisions about materials, logistics, marketing, and most importantly, labor. Because every dollar saved on labor doesn't disappear, it becomes profit. Now imagine that same product produced under fair conditions, fair wages, safe environments, reasonable hours. That $5 production cost doesn't stay $5. It becomes $12, $15, maybe more, which means the final price goes up.
And here's the problem. Most people say they care, but behavior says otherwise. When faced with two options, people choose cheaper, not because they're bad, because they're conditioned, because the system trained them to prioritize price. So companies adapt. They don't optimize for ethics, they optimize for demand. And demand rewards low cost. So the system stays exactly as it is, not because it's hidden, but because it's tolerated. Now, let's go deeper, because it's not just factories. It's agriculture, where workers harvest food under extreme conditions for minimal pay. It's mining, where raw materials are extracted under dangerous circumstances. It's construction, where labor is often unregulated and underpaid. It's logistics, where speed and efficiency override human limits. Anywhere there is pressure for low cost and high output, exploitation finds a way in. Because incentives drive behavior. Companies are rewarded for efficiency. Consumers are rewarded for low prices, and the system aligns perfectly around that, even if the human cost is ignored. Now, here's the critical point. Most people imagine a clear villain, a single company, a single decision, but that's not how it works. Modern exploitation is distributed. Responsibility is spread across layers. Suppliers blame subcontractors. Brands blame suppliers. Consumers blame companies. And because responsibility is diluted, no one feels accountable. That's what makes the system so powerful. It doesn't rely on secrecy. It relies on complexity, on distance, on the fact that you don't see the origin of what you buy. Because if you did, it would be harder to ignore. Now, think about control. Because slavery today isn't always ownership, it's restriction. If someone cannot realistically leave their situation, they are not free, even if there are no visible chains, even if everything looks legal. That's the reality for millions of people, working within systems they didn't choose, producing value they don't benefit from, while that value moves upward, concentrated, compounding. And here's the question you need to sit with. If something generates billions, why would it stop? Systems built on profit don't collapse because they're wrong. They collapse when they stop working. And right now, this system works extremely well. That doesn't mean nothing can change, but it does mean change isn't automatic. It requires awareness, because awareness changes perception, perception changes behavior, and behavior, over time, changes systems, slowly but consistently. It starts with questioning, looking beyond the surface, understanding that price is not the full story, because the real cost of a product isn't just what you pay, it's what someone else had to give up to make it possible, their time, their safety, their freedom. And once you understand that, you don't see products the same way, you don't see systems the same way. You start recognizing patterns, you start noticing incentives, you start asking better questions. Modern slavery isn't a relic of the past, it's embedded in the present, integrated into global systems, sustained by demand, and maintained by silence. Now you see it, and once you see it, you can't go back to not knowing. The only question left is, what do you do with that awareness? Because ignoring it keeps the system running, but questioning it is where change begins. If this changed the way you see the world, subscribe, because most people will keep consuming without thinking, and a few will start understanding the systems behind everything. Be one of them.